When I was younger, I had this dream of being that girl that I saw on all the movies and the TV shows that I was watching. The girl that was popular and loud and friendly and, she could talk to anybody. She didn't think twice about what she was gonna say next. She was curious and she didn't care. I thought all those things meant that you were confident. That once I had the things, I would then have confidence. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I was the shy, awkward, unapproachable girl that nobody wanted to talk to. And I might be exaggerating a tiny bit, but my reality was that I was never going to get there, right? I was never gonna have the confidence. And it's been a long time since I really felt like that person. I struggle with social anxiety, and I'm also an introvert, which makes things that much more difficult. But I've come a long way since then. And so in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about how you can have confident conversations. Now, before we get into the video, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Bridget. On this channel, you'll find me talk a lot about social anxiety, a lot about introverts, general anxiety, communication skills, a whole bunch of other stuff. So if any of that interests you, make sure you go check out some of my other videos. Don't forget to like this video if you found it helpful or useful. Comment down below what you'd like to see more from me, and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. The girl I talked about in the beginning, the popular girl with the confidence, the one that was outgoing and curious and she didn't have a care in the world. I don't know if I've necessarily gotten to that point, but I will say I do have the confidence. I no longer carry the mountain of anxiety that I used to. There are three main things that I think you guys would find most helpful. The first one, and the most important one out of all of them, mindset. I never knew how important mindset was when it came to socializing, when it came to having great conversations with people. But mindset is important in almost every single aspect of life. When I made that transition from where I was, actually I made many transitions, but the biggest jump that I made was overcoming that severe anxiety that I had when I was younger. And the biggest part of it was a mindset shift. I had to believe that I was confident. I had to believe that I was strong. I had to believe that what I said mattered. And so with that mindset, I started to visualize some of the experiences that I wanted to happen. I started to go into a conversation having somewhat of a picture of what I wanted that experience to look like. Who did I want to approach me? Or who did I not want to approach me? Did I want to be in groups? Did I want to just be talking one-on-one? What kinds of things was I going to talk about with that person? And it's really important to get specific about that visualization. Are people going to be friendly when you're in this setting? Are they going to want to talk to you for a long period of time? Be as specific as possible. And what's great about visualizing, something that I didn't really know back then, but I do know now, is that the way our brain works with visualizing, we can't tell the difference between when we do visualize and reality. Whatever happens in our brain during that conversation is the same thing that happens in our brain when we visualize that conversation. It's something that athletes do before a big game. It also helps just ease my mind and comforts me a little bit knowing that these are the potential scenarios. But it's more effective to think about the good scenarios that are going to happen. This happens a lot with people with social anxiety, and I know because I've been there. Sometimes when we do visualize, not intentionally, we start to think about all the bad things that are going to happen. We start to think about the rejection. Because our mind is occupied with all of those fears, when we go into a conversation, our mind goes elsewhere. We're not focusing on that person anymore. It starts to become about us. We're thinking about what we're going to say next. We're thinking about, we sound okay if we look okay. We're thinking about what happens if this person rejects me, doesn't want to talk to me anymore. So mindset is so important above all else. The second thing I want to talk about is our own self-image. I thought I wasn't good enough for people. If I didn't look the part or act the part or sound the part, I was never going to fit in. And so I had to kind of rewire my thinking into believing that no matter what, I was going to fit in. I was going to find the right person. I was going to have a great conversation with that person. And so I started visualizing. So I had to really think about what kinds of things intimidated me about those conversations. What kind of people intimidated me? Was it groups? What were the fears that were coming up for me? And so I used that visualizing tactic to make those events, those conversations, those people less intimidating. So I visualized what would happen right, instead of focusing on all the things that could go wrong. Your self-image is who you are projecting in that conversation. So if your self-image is poor, that's what you're going to be thinking about in that conversation. Us introverts, we tend to get in our head about everything, and that is one of the worst things you can do in a conversation, because that person's going to probably think that you're not paying attention to them, that maybe you think that they're boring or you don't want to talk to them. It also doesn't allow the conversation to flow effortlessly. If we're so caught up in our own thoughts and thinking about what we're going to say next and think about how this applies to a story that we had from the past, we're not going to be thinking about what that person is saying. Great conversations are always effortless. You're jumping off of each other's ideas. You're not writing an essay in your head and then word vomiting it to the other person. That's not a great conversation. No one wants to be in that conversation. The last thing I want to mention, which is probably what most of you will take away from this video, because it's actual things that we can do in a conversation. These are the practical tactics. The first one I want to talk about was one of the hardest things for me to cultivate, and I honestly don't even know why. I think it comes from that self-image and the fear of judgment and all that stuff. Eye contact. Eye contact is one of the best things that you can give to a person in a conversation. If your eye contact is not there, if you're not looking at that person, again, they're going to be thinking that you don't care about the conversation. You don't want to be there. No one wants to have that. No one wants to think that you're not giving your full attention to them in a conversation. It immediately shuts the conversation down. Body language is another one. So sometimes the most subtle things we do with our body give that person your full attention, and it lets them know that you're enjoying the conversation, or you're curious about the conversation, or you're excited about the conversation, depending on what you do with your body. So a lot of times, like, I will lean in, or when I am in a conversation, I will talk with my hands a lot, because that for me makes me, I don't know, a little bit more animated and excited about the conversation, and it helps me kind of keep my focus a little bit. Another thing I like to do is just having go-to phrases to either start a conversation or keep a conversation going. So I'm a very curious person, and I don't know, I just like to know things. That's just part of who I am. So I will almost always start a conversation with something I find interesting about that person, whether it's something they're wearing, or if it's about where they're from, or what they do for a living. I think it's interesting. How long have you been doing that for a living? I think this is a great way to not only start a conversation, but also to keep a conversation going and flowing, because a lot of the times you can really jump off of something that they said, especially if it's something that you find interesting. And what I've really learned is that while using these tactics can be super effective, if you're not genuinely curious about it, it's not really going to work. Because I think it's really, well, sometimes it's easy to tell when a person is just using a gimmicky tactic versus whether they're actually interested in the conversation. So make sure that with those conversation starters, those things that you always talk about or like to do, make sure that you're genuinely curious about them. Ultimately, if it's a commonality between the two of you, you're going to want to talk about it for a while. Or another thing I like to keep in mind when I'm talking to a person is having humor in it, because I don't know, I consider myself to be funny and sarcastic and witty, so I always incorporate that in a conversation because it's showing who I am. It's a projection of who I am inside, again, that self-image. And it also just makes the conversation better and lighter. And if that's another commonality you have with the other person, hopefully it is, because sometimes people don't get sarcasm. So hopefully if it's a commonality, that's another thing to help keep that conversation going. The last thing I want to mention with those tactics is something super easy that I think all of us can incorporate into our conversations, and that's smiling. Sometimes smiling in a conversation or laughing, if it's genuine, really helps alleviate the pressure, especially if the other person is like you in a way and is nervous about the conversation. When I see someone laugh or smile in a conversation, it makes me happy. It makes me want to keep talking to that person. It lets me know that they're enjoying the conversation, that they want to keep talking to me. So it's a really good indication of, just how you're viewing the conversation. Unless it's sad. Don't smile or laugh if it's sad. Those practical tactics are things that I almost always use in a conversation, and they have proven to be pretty effective for me. So keep these in mind the next time you do go into conversation, or the next time you try to visualize those conversations if you are nervous about having them and you want to be more confident. And guaranteed it will definitely help you out. So thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed and got some use out of it as always, and I will see you next time.